So I'm here with David and Daithí Maher. What we're going to do is we're going to go through their background of when they were milking the parlour, a 22 unit parlour, and their transition to 4 robot milking system. So you might just give me a background of where you were a couple of years ago, cow numbers, what type of parlour you were in, and just the background.
So we were between 190 and 200 cows, 22 unit parlour, dumpling, air feeders, automatic cluster removers. We we needed to do something. Labour was becoming a bigger and bigger issue, and we were looking at either upgrading the parlour or changing to robots or rotary or something to save time. That was the big thing.
Okay. So you're milking about 190 to 200 cows. What kind of yields and solids were they doing?
So we're in around 7,000 litres, around 550, 560 kilos of milk solids. That hasn't changed much since the robots went in.
So last year then there would have been a bit more heifers in it as well.
Yeah, there was a lot more heifers. So that was one of the other reasons for looking at changing systems. We had 65 heifers coming in spring of 24. When we went looking at things, we thought that the robots might have been suited with the heifers, because you hear stories of lads having to cull 20% of the herd or different reasons, and we had an established herd. We wanted to try and keep that, and we thought this was the time to change if we were going to change at all.
Okay. So I suppose before you started up in 2023, November 2023 with the robots. So just to maybe go the year before that, or I suppose any research you were doing, when did you actually start looking at robots properly?
Spring. The spring of 23. We had, I suppose we had kind of ongoing labour issues for maybe a year and a half, 2 years before that. Just we had part-timers, but we couldn't. We were always missing that full-time labour unit, and that was falling back on me constantly. And it was actually funny. We were at the plough match, and myself and my wife Stephanie and the kids, Steph had never seen the robot, so we just went in on the stand, and we were talking to Michael O'Grady, and didn't really think much of it, just had a general chat. But Dad had gone up the day after and was also talking to, I don't know who was this? It was Willie Conlon at the same time then. And we both said it when we came back afterwards that maybe we should look at it, and we had both spoken to him at different.
Okay.
So coming on from that, Michael came down, we looked. In the meantime, we actually managed to get somebody full-time, but it just didn't work out, basically. So the following spring, we contacted Michael, and we contacted Michael, and we started looking strong at a couple of systems. Travelled a lot of the country that summer, spoke to a lot of people, and kind of took it from there. And we had our deal done on paper in August of 23, and we were running up and running in November 23.
So I suppose coming to the decision of robots, you looked at other brands of robots, and you were also looking at parlour and rotary as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at 3 brands of robots, and we visited, I suppose, a dozen farms of the different brands. We initially looked at rotaries, and the external build, the delay that would be caused by planning permission, and trying to work it in because of different levels around the farmyard, trying to work a rotary in with the accommodation just didn't add up. And so we sort of we narrowed it down to robots, and then we started the process of what colour.
When we were looking at the parlour, we were between 2 tanks, so extending the parlour wasn't an option. So we looked at maybe going to a feed to yield system so anybody could milk, because our herd varies obviously, and we were trying to feed to yield manually by taping cows. So we thought maybe if we had gone a feed to yield system that might help. That was pretty costly, just to upgrade the parlour that was there. We looked at doubling the parlour, but power supply. We're on single phase electricity, so we would have had to look at getting 3-phase, and 3-phase is not close to us. And then how efficient is a doubled up parlour in that size? Like a 22 unit is efficient for one person, a good person to run on their own, but a lot of the time you need 2 people, or people want a second person there, but the second person is kind of wasted in such. So look, yeah, it was the manpower, back to time, back to most efficient ways forward. And after going visiting the robotic farms and seeing how the other half were living, I suppose is one way of putting it, we thought that this might be the way for us. Like, we didn't think that the cows would adjust. We expected more problems than what we got, and we didn't.
Yeah, even at startup, you expected a good, because 190, 200 cows on 3 robots at that yield of doing, what, 32, 33, 34 litres a peak.
Yeah. Oh, it was completely on the edge, and it was yourself that brought it up that milk speed was going to be our deciding issue. But we stuck with the 3 because we were convinced that when we started, we were going to lose 10-15% of the herd, because like our cows go from first calvers to, I think the oldest one out there is a 12th lactation cow at the moment, and we started with one, I think it was 183, and 183 took to the robots. The following spring then, well, we thought strong, we had good milk speed, and we said maybe we might be able to push it to 200, but that would be an awful lot in our first year. And cow prices were on the floor. We had 60 heifers. We were going to have to sell 40 cows if we were going to bring in the 60 heifers. So we decided that maybe we should put in the 4th robot in January, and that's the route we went.
Yeah. So from there on then, you've been 4 robots and milking how many for last year?
Last year we averaged 225. This year we peaked at 237. At the moment we're back to 220, just through different issues. Cows getting on, cows getting old.
So going back to then the actual, so you made a decision in August.
Yep.
To go robotic from 2020 to August 2023.
Yeah.
So what happened between August and November, work-wise, to get ready?
Well, the paperwork was signed up, and I went out and started pulling cubicles off the walls. We had an idea of where they were going. There was just, I suppose, the positioning and the grazeways was just whether we were a few foot this way or a few foot that way. That was the only thing. So yeah, it was time sensitive, so we decided just to belt away. So we did wait until close to the end of August before we started jackhammering, and then we went hell for leather and dug out and put in the flow channels and built the rooms. Like the rooms, I suppose when you're doing it in a retrofit, it's a little bit awkward. You're between a tank, you're between a wall. You can only pour a small bit at a time. You're moving shutters out.
And you're between milkins.
And you're between milkins, yeah. That was the other thing at the time. Like, we done a lot of the work ourselves. I mean, now we had good people helping us too, good contractors.
Yeah, good contractor.
In every form. They were flexible. But sure, they're all farmers as well. Like, so we all worked along. And but yeah, between milkins, we bursted out of it and had a few little setbacks because of the weather in autumn of 23. But we got there in the end anyway, and we got up and going. And
So the plan itself of the actual, because the footprint of the 4th robot even went in that time.
yeah, so we built for the 4th robot. It was, at the time we were like, I'm better off put 3 cubicles there, and you were, no, you should always, it's cheapest now, do it now. And then I was thinking, what was I going to do with this room? And I said, maybe I put a bag of lime in it, and I parked the limer in there. Lo and behold, anyway, there was the 4th one went in.
So who would have actually gone through the plan, and I suppose the initial plans, and then you're finalising the plans, and then you're handing it over to...
Sure, Willie Conlon came down, and Willie talked us through where we were going to go and what options were there. There really only was the one option because we were retrofitting, and we were milking at the same time, so milking couldn't go undisturbed. a lot of gates tied up with twines around the place and cows held on roadways. But anyway,
And
that
breakouts.
was and breakouts and yeah, just it was heavy going there for a few weeks.
So, and then you would have had John Breslin kind of going,
Yeah,
helping
so-
you throughout the build.
Yeah, so John used to come down and kind of every few days he'd be down and he'd kind of guess how long we'd be till the next part, and then he'd show up for that. But yeah, so once Willie had the drawings done, he handed over to John. John came down. I think John and Willie were there at one stage doing levels and just making things, because the same thing, you were dealing with tanks with different heights, and we had a plan we used to pump from a tank at the back of the shed through the front of the shed, but it was through a holding area, so we could just pump the slurry down with a pipe rolled out, and we changed that to a flow channel where the cows exit, and all the slurry gets pumped now from the tanks. So the back tanks, we just never use the tanker out there, agitate the slurry and blow it through the shed to the main tank.
Once everything came together and everything was ready for install, or for install of robots and then commission. So how long did that take then between?
The actual robots
Yeah.
and stuff. I think the first week they done 4 days, long days, 4 men, and the second week they done 3 days with 2 men, and that was from the robots being taken from the shed and put in pipe work, bar work. I suppose one other thing to be added was our own electrician was there when that was going on too, and he done his bit, and sure, we kind of joined up the dots ourselves then, like with the bits of plumbing, and we had to put in a buffer vessel and things like that. And yeah, I think that's about right, isn't it? 4 days, 4 men, and then
about that, yeah.
And then start up the following.
and yeah, I think we finished on a Wednesday and we started up the following Tuesday.
What did actually need to go in for the robots to work?
So we had to put in 2 flow channels. One as a gathering area, so that was pretty wide. It was 110 feet long, 12 feet wide, and then an exit one that runs along the front, and that was about 4 feet wide and 90 feet long.
Okay, and that all led into a pre-existing
Tank.
tank. And that tank was what size?
14 by 40.
Okay, so and that's where your grazeways.
That's where one of the grazeways is, and
Yeah.
the other one's on a tank beside
So
it.
that would have been needed. Had it not been there, that would have been needed.
That would have been needed, yeah.
So you had the flow channels to put in, and then you had the concrete of the robot rooms.
Yeah.
And anything else then?
Sure, electrician. I suppose there's a few bits and pieces of miscellaneous items. Like we had to build an office and a compressor room. They weren't shuttered. They were an external contractor. Again, just man came in to lay blocks. Yeah, that's kind of like the concrete works came in at about 43k. The miscellaneous in the office came in around 10,000. Sorry, the robot rooms was included in that 43.
Okay, so that 43 was your
Yeah.
robot rooms,
Yeah, so
flow channels, and then you had your.
and then 10,000 for the office and miscellaneous bits and pieces. Electrician was another 6,000. And then we're on to the big one, I suppose, the robots themselves.
Yeah.
So the first 3 initially cost 380. And then the last one was 110.
Fair enough. So then the total, I suppose, adding up your robots, your electrical, miscellaneous, concrete,
Yeah,
and flow channels, then that came in at
565,000.
okay for the total
For the
project.
total project.
Plus the VAT.
Plus the VAT, yeah. Plus the VAT.
Everything plus the VAT.
Yeah.
So that was the total project then. And had you priced beforehand in terms of parlour or rotary? Had you gone through any of the costings on that?
Yeah, we
looked at upgrading the parlour to full feed to yield and full management system, and basically what we'd have to do would have cost us the cost of a robot, that sort of money.
Just to upgrade the 22 unit.
And we'd still have the manpower problem and the lack of flexibility. If you get somebody with the working time hours act. Like you still have to work the weekends yourselves, and like trying to rear like we did it in our day. But like trying to rear a family and have some sort of family life and milk cows. Yeah, like you can't be a slave to it. Like too many people are, in my opinion. So like that really made the decision for us. You know.
So even just looking at upgrading the parlour, so even if were you thinking of going greenfield or with a parlour or rotary, or did that even come into it?
We looked at greenfield with rotary, but like we couldn't, as I said earlier on, we couldn't get it to work in. And when you looked at the costs, you still had the manpower problem. You know.
We looked at trying to fit it into another shed that's across from the hole in the yard, the calf shed, but it was just slightly too narrow. And even looked at putting in beams and just extending out where the circumference is the most in the rotary, but it wasn't going to work. Then we were going to have to go build a calf shed somewhere else. Where the yard is pretty well laid out, and to go build a rotary, like Dad was saying, if we either have to go, well, we had to go below the yard, so it means we go below the yard. Now in the wintertime you have the cows walking down slopes, and sure, with frost and ice and things like that, you don't want them walking down slopes in the icy time.
And then the other big one as regards to rotary was
back to the labour.
Power supply and labour.
Yeah, the power supply and the labour. Yeah.
You know, so like that, it priced it out.
Yeah.
And you didn't get you didn't get the same benefit. You know, like you couldn't go off to see a match of a Sunday evening. And somebody had to be there to operate the rotary at the end of the day. Like life is for living. Like they say, work to live, not live to work.
Grazeways out. So you have two grazeways because you're check out and there's, you know. So from grazeways out to make ABC work outside, did you have to do much?
I concreted 40 pigtails into mineral buckets and a split roadway, about 100 yards, and that's it so far.
Well, we did concrete.
Oh well, we concreted. Well, we didn't for the first year, but we had AstroTurf down on hardcore. Look, it was grand, but that close to the yard, and look, cows will congregate always close to a yard. It just got very messy very fast. So once the cows went dry and went in, we pulled it all out and we concreted maybe 20 feet either side of the grazeways and just the area around, and like already. They don't even stand out there anymore. They just stay moving into the yard.
It's just a better surface.
It's just a better surface.
Yeah.
It's just a better surface.
So going through the comparison of the running costs now after a full year in robots versus, I suppose, the 2022 unit parlour that you had. So I might go through it because you've obviously haven't wrote down. So we'll start off with the main one, power usage.
Well, overall, the electricity consumption is about 50% more than it was with the parlour, but it's only about between 25 and 30% more in real cost, from the point of view that there's a larger proportion of the power being used at night rate than there was with the parlour. The other thing to be said is that the robots are heating their own water, so our gas usage has dropped to about 50% of what that was. On the overall operation, everything from scrapers to water boost and compressors and robots themselves and all the ancillaries, it uses basically a unit per cow per day, which is costing us about 30 cents per cow per day at the moment.
Okay, so that's total cost including
That's
the whole.
cost. That's everything from electric fence to pump and you name it.
Okay.
It's all on the 1 meter and easy enough to monitor.
Okay. And then I suppose from chemical usage then point of view.
Chemical. Well, the one thing that on the overall cost, the one thing that would have to be said that's compared to a variable speed motor parlour. I'd say we're using the same. Probably maybe even a little bit less than before we had variable speed motors on the 22 units.
So the power usage would have been.
Yeah, would have been far greater before we put in the variable speed on the parlour. So
and when did the variable speed went in 2020?
2021.
2021. Okay, so you had 2 years on the variable speed. Yeah. So if you compare it back to 2020, the robots would have been thereabouts with the with the e-speed cost.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So then chemical usage then, what roughly is that working out with? So you've...
Chemical usage is more or less the same, I'd say.
Yeah, little bit less.
A little bit less, yeah.
Initially when we put in the 3 robots, it was about 25. There was about 20% less. So now with the 4th one gone in, it's nearly 95% of it. So, yeah. So like chemicals, hasn't changed too much. Teeth dip basically in around the same. Maybe saving it 10% less. But we were doing pre spraying on cows as well. So liners, we seem to be using less liners for some reason. Even though we're changing them all at the same time, but we seem to be using less sets. I don't know. It's because the robot is actually counting the milkings. You kind of change. You know, you might change the 4th one more often than you change the 1st one. Like,
No, the thing with liners, of course, is that in the parlour, the liners were flexing all the time. You
yes,
were washing as
that's
well,
true.
which just makes a big difference.
Yeah, they're in fixed, and even at that, you'd see some of the liners, and they'd be perfect when they'd be coming out. But yeah, the only thing I suppose we're using a bit more of that we weren't using in the parlour was paracetic acid. That's it, but not major either.
Okay. And then water-wise then?
Water-wise, so we have a dairy washings tank. The parlour would have went directly into it, so the plant would have been washed into this tank, and the floor of the parlour would have been washed into a slatted tank. The robot's main wash goes out into this tank as well. At the moment we're emptying the tank. We're getting 3 times longer out of the tank basically, and it's still out in the same place. It's still the same amount of animals wandering over it. So we seem to be. It seems to be an awful lot less now. There is an amount of water goes into the slats, but we don't see any excess on the slurry storage end of things, so we don't think it's anything considerable going in at the tank.
Okay, so roughly what, 40%?
Yeah, maybe 40-50% probably of a saving.
Less water usage.
Less water usage, yeah.
Okay. And I suppose the service side of things, I know you're only in your, I suppose, 2nd year now per se, but you're on a service contract.
Yeah, we're on a service contract. Yeah. I suppose that was one of the things that kind of attracted us to Lely, was talking to farmers who had robots in 1 month or 10 years. They were paying the same for their service contracts. You only pay for what you break basically, and that was attractive. So yeah, they come in, they're doing their routine servicing. One of the lads usually rings me day before maybe, or even maybe 2 days before, and say, I'm going to be there, is there any problem? I always make the joke, I'll tell the cows so that they're not in the way, but they just come in, they do their own thing, and if there's any issues they'll ring you, or if you want to, they'll show you little things, because like, look, the life of these things is doing regular servicing and I suppose keeping things clean, keeping the lasers clean, you know, keeping the cups clean, just keeping dirt out of the way is the key to them. And the lads will tell you, and they tell you if you weren't doing something right, they wouldn't be too long about pulling you up on it either. So
so I suppose just at the end of 2024 then, just cow production wise, where would you have ended up compared to say the year beforehand?
Yeah, so at the end of 24 we will end up at 550 kilos of milk solids. 23 we had done 568, so we did drop back a bit.
But there were 60 heifers.
Yeah, there were 60 heifers. I suppose the main thing we found was our butterfat went up, our protein went up, SEC stayed much the same.
TBC went down.
TBC went dramatically down, yeah. Now it wasn't high to begin with, but like we're getting 2s and 3s now, whereas we would have been kind of 6s and 7s with the parlour, and we are on a bonus scheme for TBC, so that was a plus. You have individual information on cows, and you compare like this cow's yield to this cow's yield, and then you say, well, like this cow's only, you know, she done 6,000 litres, but here she only averaged 1.6, 1.7 milkings. The robot is very efficient. The amount of electricity you use to get the milk out, they're linked. and I think it's a great thing. But yeah, we've seen this year now, like cow movement was good last year. Now we did a bit of pushing in the spring to kind of get the herd mentality to break up. But like there was older cows there, 7 to 8 lactation, that dropped down when they started on the robot. Just thought it was generally older cows, yield gone down. This year they've flying back up again. Like there's one cow that's 9th lactation, and she was, I think she'd done 5,500 litres last year, and she's predicted on the robot to do 7,000 litres now this year.
Okay. Well, cow production wise, fat and protein percentages up last
Yeah.
year, yield back a little bit, overall solids back about 18 kilos per cow, with 60 heifers in herd as opposed to
Yeah, 30.
30.
Yeah.
So all in all, not a bad first year.
Oh God, no! I'd
So-
be delighted.
Going by this spring then, and prediction wise on the robots, and even going by your own figures, what are they kind of going to end up at this year?
So yield-wise, we should be back to where we were in 23, but at the moment the solids do look like they're going to be up higher again. So look, I don't know, is the solids coming from the extra milkings? I have heard people talking about this, that they did find a rise in their solids, but the robot also forces you to be better at your grassland. Now we were good, probably grazing a little bit on the higher side, because we never wanted to run out of grass. You know, you didn't want to start the feeder in June. But now with the robot, we don't need to start the feeder. If we run out of grass, it could be a matter of putting in 1 bale, 2 bales. Like putting in 2 bales for 220 cows, to do that in a diet feeder, all you do is cause a stampede, and you have to spread it around the whole shed. Another half an hour's work in the day. There's 70, 80 spaces out there now. You put in the bale, so if you're running that 5-6 kilos of grass behind, you put in the bales maybe only for 2-3 days until growth picks up again. This cow might get the silage, the next cow will get grass. It just balances the whole thing out.
So you find it much easier to
Oh,
fill
100%.
little gaps throughout the year.
Like
Okay.
we've got 2 feeds on the robots, so it's not all nuts. Barley in one, nuts in the other. We're able to put the proportions to the way we suit. If there's certain cows we think need more, that are not on the feed to yield, we can go in, we can fix feed them. You know, there's so many options it opens up. You couldn't list them all.
For the extremely high yielding cows,
yeah.
during the breeding season, we're feeding gluconate, just to improve, just to guarantee fertility.
Yeah, so you have a liquid feed then as
And
well.
liquid feed, yes.
Liquid feed as well.
What worries did you have that actually didn't come true? Or now that you're looking back over the...
I'm sure a lot of them you'd count now as urban myths. Like you'd hear the story of so-and-so put in the robot down there and robots are gone, or the cows are all treated now, or he's out all hours of the night on the quad running around after cows.
The phone is ringing.
The phone never
off.
stops. Yeah, the phone never stops. Yeah, look, we had all them worries. Didn't look. I suppose we expected a lot more hardship than what we got, and we got on well. Like we did get on well. Now, like, look, we didn't just put the robots in. Like we did, you put in the hard graft for the first few weeks. Even when they went to grass, it was still, you'd go out, you'd be watching cows, you'd be taking down numbers, and then you'd be checking on the phone. What time did she move? Is she moving fast enough? All them worries now are kind of gone. You just look, you go get the cow that you need to get. Generally speaking, she is sick. That's why you're going to get her. Okay. But most of the cows are moving themselves.
I think a big thing is knowing when to stop pushing cows in the beginning.
Yeah.
Don't give the cows the habit of needing a person to be there to get them into the robot. I think that, when I hear of people who are constantly pushing cows, I think that's the big mistake. You've got to let them find out, and it's amazing how well they adapt.
The solids, the solid indicator, like having 200 recordings versus 6, especially this time of the year. You go in, like you just pull up the cow's lactation. You have her predicted yield for the year. You have her fat and protein so far. You have your fat and protein every day on the dashboard interface. You have her milk speed. You have all these tools to breed the perfect cow. Like there's cows you would have been thinking that you were breeding from that were great, and then you go in and look at them and yeah, they had decent milk, but like then you realise the protein is on the floor. Like, so yeah, like that is helping with breeding decisions. Look, we haven't seen it yet, but we know we're breeding from our best now. So like yeah, in the next 3-4 years, I hope there should be a serious order of cows. Like we've got good averages. Like we're at 3.7 protein as it is, but like I think we should be able to go a bit further even, and the robot will enhance that. Like
How has the labour reduced since the robots have gone in?
one full-time labour unit less, and I suppose my hours have pulled back as well. Like I get a Sunday or I get a day in the week anyway, whereas I don't have to call upon someone to come in and do anything. I can do the wires, we can go off for the day. That's
Okay, so you're after, I suppose, one less labour unit. You have more flexibility
more flexibility.
and a bit more work-life balance, or less hours on farm. So which is kind of the main reasons why you...
Oh yeah, the main reason. Like,
so it was labour driven, or it was...
Yeah, like we looked at robots 10 years ago, but like I hadn't like any kids or anything like that. I'd work round the clock. You know, you just wanted to do it and didn't think they were for us. But like your perspective changes as you get older. Like now you have 4 kids and now you have to have them for hurling training. One night a week you have to go to a match. Your time's not your own anymore. And
But you liked milking.
I loved milking, yeah, I did, and it was probably the hardest thing not to be able to do. Like I was lost for the first few weeks, I'll be honest. I go out and you know what needed to be done, but you just didn't know where to start, because
Milking added structure.
you'd be in the parlour and you'd be milking and you'd say, right, I'm going to do this now when I'm finished making, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other thing. Yeah, you were running around like a blue arse fly, but you were having your morning meeting with yourself, like. Which then you go out and the robots are milking away. Like now I know where my day goes and what I need to do, but still
It took a bit of time.
It took me longer, I'd say, than the cows. It did take me longer than the cows, and I'm still working on it. Like.
So thanks very much, lads, Daithí and David, for having us. We're after going through a fair bit there. So if anyone has any questions at the end of the webinar, make sure you write in the Q&A box and we'll be sure to answer them.